What's going on, guys? PC here, and welcome to another episode of Pickups. So I'm doing this a bit earlier than usual, mainly because I just picked up a whole ton of Dreamcast games this month. I just kept finding deal after deal after deal that I couldn't pass up, and I ended up picking up over 20 different Dreamcast games. So I'm really thrilled about that. I picked up a few other things for other consoles as well, and we'll start off with those because there's not that much of that, and we'll just move on to the Dreamcast stuff after that. So let's get started. So first up, I picked up a couple PS1 games on eBay for really cheap. The first one is A Bug's Life, which I may have actually played as a kid. I vaguely remember renting this game from a local video store, but I could be wrong about that. I'm not 100% positive, but I picked it up mainly because of that, and it was really, really cheap. And the other PS1 game I picked up is Sledstorm, which was actually recommended by Boyfriend from Girlfriend Versus. And if you've never watched Girlfriend Versus on YouTube, I highly recommend you go and check that out. Basically, the concept behind that is this guy and his girlfriend, the girlfriend has never really played video games before, and in each episode she plays a new game, and it's really, really fun to watch. It has some fantastic editing, and it's really cool to get the opinion of someone who's never really played video games before on these various different games. It's just a fantastic series. I highly recommend you go and check that out. Boyfriend recommended this in his pickups video, and I thought I'd pick it up because I saw it for really cheap. It's a snowmobile racing game. I don't think I've ever actually played a snowmobile racing game before. I played jet ski racing, which I'm sure is fairly similar. But, yeah, ought to be interesting. I'll probably do a first look video on this soon. Next up is a game that I actually picked up months ago, but I completely forgot to include it in my last pickups video, and that is Expeditions for the Commodore 64. Now, you probably don't recognize that name, but this is actually a compilation of 3 different games, one of which is the Oregon Trail, which is a game I'm sure a lot of you played as a kid. It's that famous educational game, and I did play this as a kid. I used to play it on the PC, a much more modern version, though, that had graphics and everything. This one is mostly text-based. It does have a sequence where you can hunt, and there's graphics there, but mostly it's text-based. It's really easy, actually. I beat this game really quickly, but I think you can go for a high score, which is basically the goal of this. But it has a couple other games on it as well, but they're all basically the same concept. You're traveling from point A to point B, and you basically try and get there without dying. The game asks you a bunch of questions, like, you've come upon a river, do you want to ford it or fly over it? Well, no, not actually fly, but, it gives you a bunch of different choices, and you try and get to your destination with most of your resources and people intact. And it's a pretty fun game. So next up is Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2 for the PlayStation 2. This is a game I used to own on the PS2, and I sold it along with my PS2 a long time ago, and I haven't played it in a long time. I just recently played it for the first time in quite a while, and I must say, this game has held up really well. It's such a fantastic racing game, and even holds up really well visually. You could use some anti-aliasing, there's jagged edges on a lot of things, but it still looks really good and plays really well. It's amazing. The cops in this game are actually smarter than the modern Need for Speed games, which is, I don't know if that's a testament to how good this game is or how lazy the developers are nowadays, but yeah, a fantastic game. Definitely recommend this if you're into racing games. So now on to the Dreamcast pickups. The first thing I picked up for the Dreamcast is this Skills 3-in-1 controller adapter, which basically just lets you use controllers from other consoles as well as computer keyboards with the Dreamcast. And it works really well. It supports the PlayStation controller as well as the Sega Saturn controller, which could be really good for fighters, as well as PS2 keyboards. And by PS2, I mean obviously computer PS2 keyboards, not PlayStation 2 keyboards. And it works really well for all 3. Actually, I haven't tried the Saturn controller yet, but I'm sure it works fine. It supports controllers as well as steering wheels. You can actually use the switch to switch between the two, but yeah, it works really well. The only drawback to this is it doesn't support computer mice, which I was actually intending on using with this, but unfortunately it only supports keyboards. I was really looking forward to trying out an optical mouse with the Dreamcast, which I know you can do if you have the right adapter, but unfortunately this one only supports keyboards, which is kind of disappointing. But other than that, it actually works really well. I got it pretty cheap, so happy to have this in the collection. So now on to the Dreamcast games. The first two I have here I actually got for free, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. They're both from the same series, Evolution 1 and 2. These are both RPGs. The first one does not work, unfortunately. I got it for really cheap. It was about $4 or something like that. And unfortunately it doesn't work, which is really odd because the disc actually has very few scratches on it. Maybe a couple light scratches, but mostly it looks like it's almost in mint condition, but it will not boot. It goes to the Sega logo and just goes black after that. Tried it on a couple different Dreamcasts and did the same thing. So that's a bit unfortunate, but I ended up getting a refund for it, so it was free. So at least I have the case and manual, so all I need is the disc now. Evolution 2 does work, but unfortunately, as you can see, the manual is missing. This was not described in the item description, so I contacted the seller and he gave me a refund. So again, another free game, but unfortunately the manual is missing and it's really hard to find just the manual for games, so I may end up having to buy this game anyway complete, but they were both free, so how much can I really complain about that? So next up is Virtual on Ontario Tangram. This is a fairly rare game for the Dreamcast. It goes for about $20, maybe a little bit more than that, but I ended up getting it for $12, so I'm really happy about that. It's a mech game where you play a mech and you go around shooting things. I have this for the Saturn and it's really fun, so I'm sure this will actually be pretty good. Although I hear the controls in this aren't so great. The best way to play this game, from what I hear, is using the twin sticks for the Dreamcast, the twin stick controller, but that's really rare and it sells for about $100, so I don't know if I'll ever pick up one of those, but yeah, Virtual on Ontario Tangram. So next up is Kiss Psycho Circus The Nightmare Child. Apparently this is based off of the Kiss comic book series. I didn't even know Kiss had a comic book series. But yeah, it's a Kiss video game, which is interesting. It's a first-person shooter, kind of looks like Quake. Don't know a whole lot about it, but maybe it'll be good. Next up, I picked up a copy of Sega Bass Fishing 2, which I actually already owned before, but I did not have a complete copy. So now I have a complete copy, which I'm really happy about. This is a fairly rare Dreamcast game. It usually goes for over $20. I ended up picking it up for $12, along with a copy of the original Sega Bass Fishing, which I have way too many copies of, but definitely happy to have this in a complete condition. Next up is Looney Tunes Space Race. This is a really good kart racer on the Dreamcast. Probably my second favorite behind Wacky Races, but still a really solid kart racer. It looks really good. It uses a cel-shaded look, and it's just really fun. If you like kart racers, definitely check this one out on the Dreamcast. So next up is 102 Dalmatians, which is based off of the movie of the same name. I may have actually played this before on the PS1, but I'm not 100% positive on that. It is a 3D platformer. Don't know a whole lot about it, but didn't have it in the collection, so happy to add it. Next up is Soul Fighter. This is, I guess, a 3D action-adventure game. I always thought this was a fighter, a 2D fighter, but maybe because it had fighter in the name. But I guess not. It's some type of adventure game, and I hear it's fairly mediocre, but I guess we'll see. I'll probably do a first look on this eventually. Next up is NBA 2K. Yeah, I didn't have it, so I picked it up. Next up is another fairly rare Dreamcast game, and that is Mr. Driller. This game usually goes for over $20. I ended up picking it up for $12. I don't know what's up with the magic $12 number, but it's a puzzle game where you basically just play as this guy who's drilling down through a bunch of blocks, and I guess you're just trying to get as far down as you can without killing yourself with falling blocks and things like that. Actually sounds like a pretty cool concept, but I have not played it before. Looking forward to trying it out. Next up is Championship Surfer. This is kind of a unique game. I don't think there are that many surfing games out there. I've never played one myself, but yeah, I ended up getting it for cheap and might be kind of good. Next up is Sydney 2000. This is another Olympics game like Virtual Athlete 2K, which I do own and I've played before, and is extremely exhausting. Yeah, this is probably very similar. Normally these games just have you rapidly tapping buttons, and it can get exhausting, and it can feel like your hand is about to fall off. Yeah. So, yeah, Sydney 2000. So next up is Super Magnetic Neo, which is a really cool platformer for the Dreamcast. It's actually a Dreamcast exclusive. It's never been ported to any other console, and it's really unique in the fact that it uses magnets. Well, you play as this robot named Neo who can project magnetic fields from his head, and you can use those magnetic fields to either attract yourself to or repel different objects in the level, and you use that to get through the level. It's really unique and a really cool concept. It's very difficult, though. If you're not very good at platformers, you might get really frustrated with this. After the first world, it gets really difficult. But I did do a video on this, so if you want to check that out, you can see some gameplay of this. Next up is Max Steel, which is another action-adventure type game where you play as Max Steel, which I guess is a cartoon character. I'm really not familiar with him. I've never played the game before, so I can't really comment too much on it. But yeah, Max Steel, did not have it. Cool to add to the collection. Next up is Pod Speed Zone. This is a futuristic racer for the Dreamcast, and it was actually geared towards online more than anything. It had a very robust online system, which is really cool. Unfortunately, it's offline now, and there's no private servers for it, but it would be cool to play this online. I haven't actually played the game, so I don't know if it's any good. I hear it's actually fairly mediocre, but I don't know. I guess we'll see. But yeah, Pod Speed Zone. Next up is Caesar's Palace 2000. This is obviously a gambling game. I picked it up for an okay price. It's brand new and sealed. Didn't have it in the collection, so cool to add it. Next up we have Spec Ops 2 Omega Squad, which is a third-person tactical shooter for the Dreamcast. Interesting thing about this game, if you look on the inside of the manual, you will see 3 games. Legend of the Blade Masters, Gorka Morka, and Shrapnel. And this is actually where I found out about a couple of the games for my last episode of Dreamcast, the Games That Never Were. All 3 of these games were canceled. This publisher, Ripcord, didn't really have a whole lot of luck with the Dreamcast, I guess. I think this is actually the only game that they ended up releasing for the Dreamcast, so interesting thing about this. So next we have the Next Tetris Online Edition. This is another online game for the Dreamcast, and this one has actually been recommended a lot by Farmhouse the Adequate Gamer. In multiple of his videos, he's mentioned how much he really likes this game, and apparently it's really good in multiplayer. We'll see if this can actually outseat my favorite Tetris game of all time, which is currently Tetris Plus for PlayStation 1 and Saturn. I think it's a really underrated Tetris game. I have a lot of fun with that one, but we'll see how good this one is. Next up, we have Echo the Dolphin Defender of the Future. Another fairly rare game for the Dreamcast. Ended up getting a good price on this. Not really my cup of tea. I've played it before, and frankly, I think it's kind of boring. But I'm sure a lot of you probably do like this game. It's definitely different. You play as a dolphin, you're swimming around solving puzzles, and I'll give it, it's a very relaxing game. I'll give it that, and it's a really good-looking game for the Dreamcast, but definitely not really my cup of tea. So next we have Star Wars Demolition, which is basically kind of a car combat demolition derby type of game based in the Star Wars universe. I hear this game isn't very good. I've watched a Classic Game Room review of this, and if you guys have watched Classic Game Room, you know Mark doesn't usually give bad reviews to games, and this is one of the very few games he gave a bad review of, and which is kind of disappointing because it sounds like it would be fun, but I don't know. I guess we'll see. So these last few games I have here, I imported all the way from Japan through the Dreamcastgaga store, which I've mentioned a couple times before. It's a really great website run by one guy over in Japan. He sells a whole bunch of Japanese import Dreamcast games. I definitely recommend going and checking that out. He's got some good prices, and he's a really nice guy, and he gave me a really good deal on all this. So I ended up picking up a couple different things from the Dreamcastgaga store, the first of which is Poppin' Music, along with the Poppin' Music controller. This is something I've been looking to get for a long time now. It's a rhythm game by Konami that was only released in Japan. It was released on multiple different platforms, but as far as I know, it's never been released outside of Japan. It's a lot of fun. I hear it's a pretty big hit over in Japan on consoles as well as in arcades. It actually shows an arcade machine on the front there. But it's a lot of fun and very difficult. If you're not very good at rhythm games, you might get a little frustrated with this. I'm only able to do really the easy songs, and that's just about it. Maybe with a little more practice, I might be able to do the other ones. I'll probably do a video on this soon, so you can see what it's like, but it's got a few different genres in it, including country, and dance, and disco, and fantasy. it actually covers a lot of different things, which is surprising. I thought it would only have Japanese music in it, but it has a whole bunch of different genres. The game is very import friendly. It has most of the game in English. Even the lyrics are in English, which is kind of surprising, but a lot of fun. Definitely recommend checking this out if you can find it for a good price. If you want it for a good price, check out the Dreamcastgaga store. This usually goes for over $100 really for the game and the controller or close to it. I ended up paying about $60 for both the controller and the game. So if you're looking for a good price for this, check out the Dreamcastgaga store. But I picked up a couple other games from him as well, including Frame Gride, which is another mech game similar to Virtual On, where you can completely customize your mechs in this game with different weapons and a whole bunch of different things. This is actually a translation of this game that was released online that I may end up trying out and maybe do a first look on it. I have not played the game yet, but it looks like a lot of fun. I also ended up getting a free game from Dreamcastgaga. He just threw this in for free, which was really awesome of him. This is Ouroboros 3, which is, I guess, a turn-based RPG or tactical RPG. I've never played any games in this series before. I don't know if it's that import-friendly, really. Most of it seems to be in Japanese, but I'm definitely going to give this a shot. And big thank you to him for throwing this in for free. That's really cool. But that's just about it for this pickups video, guys. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at all the new additions to my collection. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe. And thanks for watching.